Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another dispatch. It's a very beautiful day out here in Colorado. I wasn't able to get to the dispatch yesterday. I was on the road coming back from Tacoma, Washington. My elder daughter was in a dance performance, so we all went out there. That was fabulous, really spectacular, just great. Anyway, good to be here, and we're gonna do part two of why we make things and why it matters. And I will go and reread the last paragraph, and then we'll carry on. It's a couple pages, almost three. Persig's view, as he develops it, is that a good life may be found through craftsman-like engagement with the actions, objects, and relationships of ordinary experience, through caring about what you do. If you choose to ride a motorcycle, then being able to repair a fouled spark plug becomes a moral imperative. 35 years later, right? Sorry, I'm always checking to make sure the sound is on. There have been a couple of times when the sound wasn't on. All right, 35 years later, sociologist Richard Sennett surveyed the same landscape from another station point in The Craftsman, where he asks what the process of making things reveals to us about ourselves. In particular, Sennett critiques current social and economic conditions for depriving workers of the satisfactions inherent to doing a job well for its own sake, which is the essence he distills from craft. His solution is to cultivate an aspiration for quality in our workplaces and schools. Like Prissig, Sennett, Sennett, employs the ideal of quality in the sense of caring about what one does to address broad philosophical questions. What is the nature of work? What is the nature of a good life? These same questions animate Shop Class as Soul Craft, in which author Matthew Crawford argues that our educational system and our occupational structures are deformed by a prejudice against manual labor. Absolutely deformed. He punctures the myth of white-collar superiority by pointing out that today's corporate workplace has been rationalized as relentlessly as the industrial factory of a century earlier. Totally. Creative thought and decision-making are centralized into the hands of small cohorts of experts so that only rote work gets distributed among the worker bees. As a result, the average white-collar employee feels, accurately, like a replaceable cog in a soulless machine. Work has been stripped of its potential to provide meaning and fulfillment. In counterpoint, Crawford asserts that significantly greater job satisfaction may be found in manual trades that engage a worker's cognitive, problem-solving abilities, such as his own vocation of motorcycle repair. Although each identifies a different culprit, all three authors believe that some primary defect in contemporary culture severs the satisfaction of individual agency from the things that we actually do. Broadly speaking, Prissig faults the Aristotelian underpinnings of Western thought. Sennett faults the culture of corporate capitalism. And Crawford faults the pernicious effects of the Cartesian mind-body divide on education and the workplace. Their indictments sound like nostalgia for a time when people found greater fulfillment in work because an aspiration to quality was ingrained. But as any furniture maker who has looked at antiques with a skilled eye knows, quality has always been tailored to the cost constraints of time and materials. Really, what Pirsig, Sennett, and Crawford are asking is not where quality has gone, but how we can cultivate the aspiration for quality in today's world. Several decades ago, we were walking down a crowded Manhattan sidewalk. As we were walking down a crowded Manhattan sidewalk, an acquaintance named George Trow, told me that you have only to step a degree or two outside of normalcy to gain an illuminating perspective on it. Certainly, that described George, who wrote for The New Yorker and flew as close to the sun of genius as anyone I've known. It's a nice way to put it. At that moment, as he was musing on his own predicament in life, but in the years at that moment he was musing on his own predicament in life. But in the years since, I have come to realize that the vantage point from my workbench is similarly askew. Furniture making, practiced as a craft in the 21st century, is a decidedly marginal occupation. Economically, socially, technologically, and culturally. Yet it also happens to be premised on the self-same ideal that Pirsig, Sennett, and Crawford each end up prescribing. For all of them, the key to a good life is the engaged pursuit of quality. As a craftsman, I have the opportunity to turn that key every day, whether or not I actually do. The yardstick of quality is always in plain sight at the workbench. While craft may be a byway of contemporary culture, its divergence offers a revealing prospect onto the main thoroughfare. The view from my workbench is complementary to those of Pirsig, Sennett, and Crawford. Our core difference is the role that we assign to creativity. Where they pay it little attention, my experience has been that the effort to bring something new and meaningful into the world, whether in the arts, the kitchen, or the marketplace, is exactly what generates the sense of meaning and fulfillment for which so many of us yearn so deeply. The dedication to quality that they prescribe is essential to productive, creative engagement, but is only a component, not the effort itself. Craft is just one arena for creativity, but it is the one I know intimately. My intuition from the day I first picked up a hammer was that making things with a commitment to quality would lead to a good life. What I propose here is to retrace my steps with reference to larger frameworks, historical, sociological, psychological, and biological, to discover how and why that intuition turned out to be valid. What is it about creative work and craft in particular that makes them so rewarding? What are the natures of those rewards? What, as Sennett asks, does the process of making things reveal to us about ourselves? As a furniture maker attempting to draw upon his own experience to illuminate such universal questions, I confess in advance to an ingrained pragmatism. The answers that make sense to me tend to be firmly rooted in the loam and muck of the world as I have found it. And that is where I'll begin. He writes nicely. Sweet. All right, that was chapter one. There you go. Why we make things and why it matters. Peter Korn. Okay. Happy Thanksgiving for all of you living in the States that celebrate. And if you're not living in the States, happy Thanksgiving because it's good to be alive. Okay, keep making stuff. Take care. Bye bye.